On the title page of the Kybalion, you find no ordinary author, only the name 3 initiates. 7 principles follow. 7 keys left in plain sight, hidden not by distance, but by the way you were taught to see, and now they have reached you. You have felt their movement before, in rooms where another person's mood became your own, in thoughts that repeated until circumstances seemed to obey them, in seasons when life swung from hope to despair, then back again, as if an unseen pendulum governed your days. You were not imagining it. You were sensing law. You were told that your mind merely reacts to the world, that emotion arrives without permission, and that reality happens outside you. But beneath that official story waits a more dangerous possibility. You have been living as an unconscious effect of causes you were never taught to recognize. That ends here. Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, gender. You may have heard these words before. Yet hearing is not knowing. A principle becomes power only when you can use it, when you can enter anger without becoming anger, feel the pendulum move without being carried by it, and raise your inner vibration deliberately. This is why the teachings were called forbidden. Not because the words were impossible to find, but because their true use changes who holds authority over your inner world. Stay with each principle slowly. Let every sentence test something you already know beneath language. You are not here to collect 7 ideas. You are here to recover 7 instruments. The first lock has always been mental, and the key is already turning. In 1908, a book was published in Chicago with no author's name on it, and for over a century, it has been quietly deciding who is allowed to understand it. It was slim, unassuming. The Yogi Publication Society released it under a signature that revealed nothing. 3 initiates. No identities followed. No public faces appeared. No authority stepped forward to ask for your trust. That absence was deliberate. The anonymity was not modesty. It was a lock, designed to keep your attention away from personalities and force it toward principles. You could not follow the authors, worship their biographies, or dismiss them by tracing their social position. Only the teaching remained. And before that teaching opened, it warned you that wisdom keeps its lips closed until understanding has developed the ears to receive it. That sentence was not a welcome. It was a refusal. The book announced that most would touch its cover, scan its words, and leave unchanged. They would possess the language without receiving the meaning. The lock would hold. Yet the book reached you. Perhaps someone mentioned it at the precise moment your old answers stopped working. Perhaps you found it during an hour of insomnia, when the world was quiet enough for another order of thought to enter. Perhaps something collapsed first. That is how the door appears. It looks like chance because the mechanism operates behind the visible surface. But chance is only the name you give to a pattern before you can see its key. The Hermetists called this correspondence. They taught that patterns repeat across levels of existence, so the smaller movement reveals the greater movement. What happens within you answers what happens around you. The outer door reflects an inner door. This is why certain words remain invisible for years, though they sit directly before you. Then your inner condition changes, and the same words suddenly carry weight. The ink has not changed, you have. The Kybalion describes correspondence as a means of approaching what seems unreachable. You study the workings of the level you know, then recognize their likeness on levels you cannot yet enter directly. The lower reveals the higher. The visible interprets the invisible. So examine your arrival here. A recommendation reaches you after a private question. A book appears during a fracture. A phrase follows you through several unrelated places until ignoring it requires more effort than opening it. The mechanism clicks. Why did this teaching reach you now? Why did it wait until your familiar explanations weakened? Why does something inside you recognize it before your reasoning does? The answer is not that you are superior. That is another lock, and pride is remarkably skilled at turning it closed. You are being summoned to responsibility. The 7 Hermetic principles are not decorations for a spiritual identity. They are not beliefs you may adopt when they feel comforting. They are mechanisms. A lock does not care whether you believe in its pins. A key does not require your philosophy before it turns. The mechanism operates according to its nature, and ignorance does not suspend it. You have already been using these principles. You have simply used them without seeing the lock. Mentalism operates when the thought you repeatedly occupy becomes the chamber through which you interpret everything. Correspondence operates when your inner arrangements reappear in your relationships, choices, and surroundings. Vibration operates through every shift. The Kybalion teaches that matter, energy, mind, and spirit differ through degrees and rates of vibration. This does not mean they are identical in ordinary appearance. It means apparent separation conceals continuity. The dense and the subtle are not divided by an absolute wall. They are different movements within a greater order. The asleep mind sees objects. The awakened mind notices motion. Science is only beginning to glimpse this continuity through its descriptions of matter and energy, but the Hermetic teaching uses it inwardly. Your moods are not fixed possessions. They are changing states. Fear has a movement. Courage has another. Resentment narrows the range through which you can perceive, while disciplined attention alters what can enter awareness. You keep turning the key. Usually you turn it unconsciously. You rehearse an injury, then wonder why every room appears hostile. You anticipate rejection, then interpret silence as proof. The lock answers precisely. This is not punishment, it is correspondence. Wisdom changes motion, lies require upkeep. As long as you believe your inner life is merely a response to the outer world, you remain trapped on one side of the door. You wait for circumstances to grant permission before changing your state. The teaching reverses this. The Kybalion reasons from your own capacity for mental creation. When you form a world inwardly, you do not gather physical materials or remove pieces of yourself. You create through mind. Your awareness pervades the image without becoming reduced by it. From this correspondence, the Hermetic writers point toward a greater claim. The universe exists within an infinite living mind. This is the master lock. You are not asked to imagine a distant craftsman assembling reality from materials found elsewhere. Nothing can stand outside the whole and supply it with parts. The all lacks nothing. Therefore, creation cannot mean borrowing from beyond infinity. Nor can the whole tear away a portion of itself and become less than whole. Creation is mental. This does not reduce the universe to your private imagination. Your personal mind is not the totality. The key is not the lock, but the operation within you reveals something about the operation beyond you. As your mental image lives within your field of awareness, existence lives within the immeasurable field the Hermetists call the All. The ancient formula turns. William Walker Atkinson and the old New Thought writers later pressed a related truth into practical life. Thought is not idle decoration. The inner word carries influence into conduct, perception, and condition. What you dwell upon shapes access. A thought repeated becomes familiar. What becomes familiar passes your defenses. What passes your defenses begins selecting what you notice, what you attempt, and what you permit yourself to become. Then you call the result fate. But fate and participation are not the same. Fate says the door chose your confinement. Participation admits your hand has remained on the key. That admission changes everything. It means your suffering is not always your fault, yet your awareness still matters. Secrecy fears exposure. Participation belongs to power. The distinction is sacred. You did not consciously choose every wound that formed your habits. You did not request every voice that taught you fear, smallness, or obedience, but you are hearing this now. At this very moment, an old mechanism is becoming visible. Once you recognize the lock, you can no longer honestly call the door a wall. That is why the book concealed its authors. A named authority would tempt you to surrender the key. You might ask what they believed, how they lived, or whether history approved of them. The silence blocks escape. 3 Initiates directs attention toward initiation itself. Initiation is not information placed inside you. It is recognition awakened within you. The unready reader seeks conclusions. The ready reader detects mechanisms. You are the one already holding the key. Do not turn that sentence into flattery. It is a demand. A key creates obligation because it removes the comfort of pretending no entrance exists. Now the stakes rise. Once you know these principles are already working, unconscious use becomes increasingly painful. Every unexamined thought presses against the mechanism. Every repeated state turns something. Some movements open, others seal. The book did not arrive merely to soothe you after collapse. It arrived because collapse loosened what comfort had kept rigid. The crack admitted understanding. You were not selected by an institution, a hidden council, or a human judge. You became reachable when the pattern inside you corresponded with the teaching outside you. Then the mechanism moved. From here, each principle will expose another pin within the lock. Mentalism will confront what you call reality. Correspondence will reveal why your worlds echo each other. Vibration will show that no state is as solid as it appears. Nothing remains casual. The door has already recognized your touch, and the silence behind it is no longer empty. It is waiting for the exact inward movement only you can make. The key was never hidden from you. It was hidden inside you, and the only reason you cannot feel it yet is that no one ever told you what door it fits. Look at the last 3 things that broke your heart, and notice, without flinching, that they were the same thing wearing 3 different faces. The names changed, the rooms changed, the promises changed. The wound did not. That is the first shock. You called each event separate because each arrived through a different doorway. Yet beneath the details, the same accusation waited, the same abandonment appeared, the same helplessness returned. It knew your name. Perhaps the first betrayal came from someone you loved, the next came from someone you trusted professionally, the third came from your own family, wearing concern like a mask, different faces, same reflection. This is where the Hermetic path becomes uncomfortable. It does not let you hide inside coincidence. It asks you to stand before the mirror until you can see what circumstance keeps revealing. Most will look away. You may have changed jobs and still awakened with the identical dread. The building looked different, but your body rehearsed the same fear each morning. Soon, the new manager began speaking with the voice of the old one. The mirror answered. You may have found a new partner who seemed nothing like the last. Then, months later, the old accusation returned through new lips. You heard that you were distant, difficult, controlling, invisible, or never fully present. Again, you may have increased your income, celebrated briefly, and believed the ceiling had finally broken. Then an expense appeared, an opportunity collapsed, or your own decisions quietly pulled you backward. Before long, your money returned to its familiar level, the number remembered. Circumstance is not random, it is legible. What repeats is not always persecution from outside you. Often, it is a precise reflection of what remains unchanged within you. That truth stings. A mirror does not punish your face. It does not invent the expression it returns. It simply reveals what stands before it, including what you hoped nobody would notice. You cannot debate glass. This is the hidden severity inside the Hermetic principle of correspondence. The outer arrangement speaks the language of the inner arrangement. The visible pattern corresponds to an invisible pattern that has already become familiar. Above answers below, within answers without. James Allen saw this clearly. In As a Man Thinketh, he teaches that repeated thought shapes character, while character finds expression through circumstance. Your surroundings do not expose everything within you, but they often expose one active element with ruthless accuracy. That distinction carries power. A painful circumstance is not proof that your entire being is corrupt. It reveals that some living pattern is still seeking completion. The mirror shows the active mark, not the total mystery of you. Shame condemns the whole. Awareness reads the part. This is why blame keeps you trapped. Blame fixes your gaze on the mirror's surface and demands that the image change first. You accuse the job, the partner, the economy, the family, or the timing. The image remains. You are not being asked to excuse betrayal. You are not being asked to tolerate abuse or deny injustice. You are being asked to notice why the same inner position keeps meeting a matching outer arrangement. This is deeper. The betrayer carries responsibility for betrayal. You carry responsibility for what you repeatedly ignore, permit, expect, or silently believe about yourself. Their act belongs to them. Your pattern belongs to you. Responsibility is not blame. Blame says you deserved the wound. Responsibility says you can stop presenting the same unguarded wound to the mirror. One imprisons you in guilt while the other returns your power. The heart crosses over. Why does the same accusation keep finding you? Why does success rise and then retreat? Why does every escape rebuild the room you fled? Do not answer quickly. The easy answer protects the pattern. It says every employer is cruel, every partner is selfish, and money never stays. That explanation feels safe because it leaves nothing inside you to confront, but safety deceives. The Hermetic teaching of vibration cuts closer. A sentence spoken on the surface cannot overpower the emotional tone sustained underneath it. You can repeat abundance while vibrating with expectation of loss. The mirror reads both. You can say you deserve love while bracing for rejection. You can declare confidence while waiting for permission. You can announce freedom while secretly fearing what freedom will require. Words are surface. This is why positive thinking failed you. You changed the statement, but the underlying vibration remained exactly where it was. The mirror returned the deeper truth rather than the polished affirmation. It heard the hidden voice. You said, "I am secure," while preparing for abandonment. You said, "I welcome wealth," while shrinking whenever your value became visible. You said, "This time is different," while choosing from the same hunger. The reflection stayed loyal. Your circumstances are not hypnotized by slogans. They respond to the whole pattern you embody: expectation, attention, habit, emotional posture, and repeated choice. The mouth announces. The life confesses. One speaks. One reveals. Alan insists that neglected thought continues producing after its own kind. What you repeatedly entertain does not remain private and weightless. Through choice and character, it moves toward completion in the visible world. Thought seeks form. This does not mean every hardship begins in your conscious mind. It means what you sustain inwardly affects what you recognize, accept, repeat, and become. The mirror catches that participation even when your conscious story denies it. That is brutal. And brutality is useful here. The first act of a hermetist is not control, manifestation, or command. It is honesty about what the mirror actually shows. No decoration. Not what it should show. Not what you tell your friends it shows. Not the flattering version you created to survive another repetition without changing. Only the reflection. You are the honest witness. That identity carries power because the honest witness neither attacks the image nor flees from it. You stay long enough to detect the exact shape of recurrence. You notice where the story changes and where it remains identical. Precision breaks enchantment. The same thing always happens is still too vague. Name the thing. Perhaps you keep earning love by overgiving, then resent anyone who accepts what you offered. See it clearly. Perhaps you hide your needs, then feel betrayed when they remain unmet. Perhaps you choose unavailable partners because longing feels safer than intimacy. Perhaps you abandon opportunities just before they can test your true capacity. Name the reflection. Your pattern survives through vagueness. It depends on your willingness to call every repetition bad luck. Once seen precisely, it can no longer impersonate fate. Fate feels fixed. Pattern can change. The same principle applies to money. Your income may rise, yet your inner permission remains tied to an older number. As soon as you exceed it, discomfort begins arranging a return. You call it mysterious, but watch the sequence. You delay an invoice, underprice your work, rescue someone at your own expense, or spend to quiet the tension of having more. The outer number reflects an inward limit you have not yet admitted. The ceiling is internal. Alan teaches that powers and possessions become the visible fruits of sustained effort and completed thought. The result does not fall from nowhere. It emerges as an inner direction becomes action, discipline, and form. The mirror records completion. Your repeated losses also reveal completed patterns. Fear becomes hesitation. Hesitation becomes missed action. Missed action becomes evidence that fear was right. The circle closes, yet the mirror is not your enemy. It gives you information no compliment can provide. It shows you where your declared desire and embodied expectation divide. That division creates repetition. Wisdom opens windows to the image. The creator studies what produced it. The creature demands another face. The creator changes what every face keeps reflecting. Now you see, you do not escape the pattern by finding a kinder mirror. You end it by withdrawing the posture that keeps appearing inside every reflection. This may mean speaking sooner, leaving sooner, receiving more, or refusing what once felt familiar. Familiarity is not truth. Sometimes the old wound feels like home. Peace then appears suspicious because it returns no familiar accusation. You may even provoke the old response just to recognize yourself again. Do not turn away. Stand there right now, without shame and without performance. Let the repeated job, relationship, argument, and money ceiling appear together. Their shared outline is the message you are finally ready to read. You were not rejected by life. You were shown a correspondence. You were given the same lesson until you became honest enough to recognize the handwriting. That moment is here. You are not the helpless image. You are the honest witness who can change what stands before the glass. A mirror never lies. So the question is no longer why this keeps happening to you, but what in you keeps standing in front of it unchanged. The mood you woke up in this morning may not have belonged to you. You opened your eyes, felt the heaviness, and called it your personality before your feet touched the floor. But what if you entered the day beneath a cloud that formed somewhere else? You inherited more than a name. You inherited an atmosphere. Your home had pressure, temperature, invisible currents moving through every room. Before you understood language, you learned the weather of the adults around you. Their fear became thunder. Their silence became fog. Their anger became heat pressing against your skin. You adapted quickly. You had to. A child cannot escape the climate surrounding them, so the child studies it. You watched faces. You listened for footsteps. You measured the distance between words. You learned whether the air was safe before you learned what safety meant. That atmosphere entered you. Now you call it just how I am. This is the soul bruise hidden inside the pattern. You do not merely repeat certain reactions. You defend them as identity. You protect the storm because you believe the storm is your nature, and anything that threatens it feels like an attack on you. But weather is not identity. Weather moves through you. It changes the pressure inside your thoughts, the speed of your breath, the meaning you assign to ordinary events. A cloudy mind reads a neutral message as rejection. A heated mind hears disrespect in a harmless sentence. A frozen mind mistakes distance for peace. The sky speaks first. You walk into a room, and your mood shifts before a word is spoken. Your chest tightens, your attention sharpens, your body prepares for something you cannot name. You look around and decide that you are suddenly irritated, tired, or anxious. That is not sensitivity. That is the principle of vibration operating without your permission. Everything in your experience carries movement, tone, and energetic influence. Your nervous system registers the atmosphere before your conscious mind explains it. The room has a rhythm. The faces have a rhythm. The silence has a rhythm. You absorb the pattern, then mistake the absorption for a personal decision. The barometer announces the pressure. You announce an opinion. The Kybalion draws a harsh distinction here. You are not automatically the thinker of every thought passing through your mind. Much of the time you are a barometer. You register the atmosphere, then declare the reading as your own conclusion. You say, I do not trust them. Perhaps you are sensing danger. Perhaps you are sensing the old tension you knew at home. Perhaps someone's expression resembles a face from your childhood, and the past has changed the weather of the present. You say, I hate being around groups. Perhaps the crowd is not the problem. Perhaps your system learned that crowds bring judgment, competition, or humiliation. The body remembers the storm even after the original sky disappears. You say, I am just an anxious person. That sentence sounds like self-knowledge. Often it is surrender dressed as clarity. Anxiety you were raised inside feels like identity because you have never known a day without it. If every morning began with tension, tension becomes normal. If affection arrived unpredictably, uncertainty becomes familiar. If approval depended on your performance, vigilance begins to feel like intelligence. You stop noticing the weather, you become the weather. This is how inheritance disguises itself. Your parents may have handed you fear without naming it fear. Your partner may carry resentment into the room and leave it hanging there. Your feed may flood your mind with outrage until calm feels naive. A crowd may breathe panic into you, and you may walk away believing you reached the conclusion alone. The storm has many sources. The sky does not ask permission. You enter your home after a long day. Someone speaks sharply. The pressure drops. Your mood changes in an instant. You do not pause to observe the shift, you defend it. You say the tone was disrespectful, the timing was wrong, the entire evening is ruined. But what happened inside you before the explanation appeared? Why did your body react before your mind formed a sentence? Why did the same words feel harmless yesterday, but threatening today? Why do you keep calling an inherited atmosphere your character? These questions open the hidden door. Your emotional state is real, but real does not mean original. A borrowed coat still keeps you warm. A borrowed fear still makes your hands shake. A borrowed belief still shapes your choices. The mistake is not feeling the storm. The mistake is signing your name beneath it. You may have learned this signature from your family. You watched someone blame the room for their mood, and you learned to do the same. You watched someone remain offended for days, and you learned that anger proves importance. You watched someone expect disaster, and you learned that worry is preparation. Endings close chapters. Future tempts postponement. If you live as a barometer, every atmosphere becomes an instruction. A tense person enters and you become tense. A cynical voice speaks and you become cynical. A fearful headline appears and your imagination begins constructing a future that has not happened. You are not choosing the storm, you are obeying it. Yet the pattern persists because the source remains invisible. You cannot change a state you believe is your nature. You cannot release inherited weather while calling it your blood. You cannot step outside a climate you mistake for the sky itself. This is why insight alone often fails. You understand the pattern, then the atmosphere shifts, and understanding disappears beneath the pressure. You promise to respond differently, but the old clouds gather around a familiar face, a familiar room, a familiar hour. Then the old self returns. Not because the old self is true, because the old weather is practiced. Your mind contains climates with long histories. Some are violent, some are merely gray, Some arrive as a permanent low-pressure system, quietly draining your energy while you call the exhaustion maturity. Some appear as sudden heat, giving you the urge to attack, defend, explain, or leave. You may even feel proud of your storm. You call anger honesty. You call suspicion discernment. You call emotional numbness strength. You call constant productivity ambition. The label changes, but the mechanism remains. You experience a state, then build a personality around it. The atmosphere becomes a biography. You tell yourself, I have always been this way. Of course you have. You have always lived beneath the same unexamined sky. But an atmosphere can be inherited without being permanent. The fact that your mother feared abandonment does not require you to fear every silence. The fact that your father distrusted joy does not require you to apologize when life becomes beautiful. The fact that your former partner created chaos does not mean peace must feel suspicious forever. Their climate may explain your reflex. It does not own your future. Dreams offer symbols. Experience sails oceans. You did not choose the first storm, but you participate when you keep naming it home. You did not create the pressure around you, but you can stop calling pressure a command. This is not about blaming your family, your partner, or the world outside you. Blame keeps your attention fixed on the clouds. Awareness teaches you to notice the whole sky, including the space where the clouds are not. You begin with a simple disruption. When your mood changes, do not immediately call it yours. Feel the pressure in your body. Notice the speed of your thoughts. Notice the impulse to judge, withdraw, attack, please, or disappear. These impulses may be important signals, but they are not automatically instructions. The barometer registers. The reader interprets. You are the reader of your own weather. That identity changes everything. A barometer cannot decide what the pressure means. You can. A storm cannot explain itself. You can observe its movement, trace its source, and refuse to confuse its arrival with your essence. Knowledge collects keys. Soil receives surrender. You will begin to notice how quickly your inner sky changes in the presence of certain voices. A message arrives, and the clouds gather. A stranger frowns, and the temperature drops. A social feed fills your mind with threat, and suddenly the whole world appears hostile. Nothing outside you has to be denied, but nothing outside you deserves automatic authority. The principle of vibration does not tell you to become numb. It teaches you that vibration travels, influences, and entrains. Your work is not to reject every atmosphere. Your work is to recognize what enters, what belongs, and what you are willing to carry. That recognition is freedom in its earliest form. At first, you may feel disloyal when you become calm. If your family bonded through complaint, your peace may seem like betrayal. If your relationship survived through crisis, stability may seem empty. If your mind built its identity around vigilance, relaxation may feel like danger. The storm will argue for its own survival. It will tell you that without anxiety, you will miss something. Without anger, you will be weak. Without suspicion, you will be deceived. Without exhaustion, you will become selfish. These are not truths. They are the old climate defending its position. Do not negotiate with every cloud. Watch it move. The wound begins to close when you stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and begin asking, "What atmosphere has entered me?" That question does not erase responsibility. It makes responsibility possible. You cannot govern what you refuse to see. The inherited storm may have shaped your first reactions. It does not have to shape your final answer. Today, when the room changes your mood, notice the moment before the story. Feel the pressure arrive. Let the sensation exist without giving it your name. Then choose whether the weather deserves to become speech, action, or silence. You are not the cloud. You are the sky that can witness it. And once you recognize the difference, the pattern loses its disguise. The fear is no longer your personality. The anger is no longer your identity. The heaviness is no longer proof of who you are. They are movements passing through a consciousness that has finally begun to read its own atmosphere. The storm inside you was inherited, rehearsed, and obeyed, but it was never the deepest truth of you. You are the reader of your own weather, and right now you can stop mistaking the forecast for your name. If the storm inside you was never yours to begin with, then someone somewhere, long before Chicago, must have already learned how to step out of the weather. And they did. Before the Bible, before the Buddha, before the first Greek philosopher drew breath, a body of teaching already existed in Egypt that explained exactly why your life keeps repeating itself. Its names changed, its symbols changed, but beneath every later religion and mystery school, the same hidden root kept feeding the tree. You were shown branches, you learned prayers, ceremonies, moral laws, sacred stories, and promises about worlds beyond this one. Yet the mechanism beneath them remained buried, where only prepared hands could reach it. That concealment matters. A branch tells you what to believe. The root reveals why belief changes experience. A branch asks for obedience. The root gives understanding. Most never dig deeper. The Hermetic tradition traces this root to Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, whom the Greeks identified with the Egyptian Thoth. He stands at the meeting point of language, number, sacred measure, mind, and cosmic law, not merely a teacher. He becomes the living name of an ancient current, carried from Egyptian sanctuaries into the Greek world. Philosophy, astrology, and alchemy emerge like separate limbs, yet all drink from the same buried source. The tree looks divided. The root is one. The Egyptians revered Thoth as keeper of sacred knowledge, divine speech, reckoning, and order. When Greek minds encountered this figure, they recognized their own Hermes within him and joined the names. Hermes became thrice great. Great in wisdom, great in power, great in the art of transmitting what cannot be safely handed to an unprepared mind. The title is a seal. It tells you this teaching does not begin as speculation. It arrives as a science of correspondences, a way of reading the visible branch to discover the invisible root sustaining it. The emerald tablet carries its most famous compression. Above corresponds with below, and below reflects above, so that the greater order and the smaller order reveal each other. One law, many scales. Long before laboratories measured repeating structures, the Hermetic mind looked for a shared pattern across planes. The heavens, the body, the state, the household, and the private chamber of thought were not separate territories. Each disclosed the others. This is the principle of correspondence, before modern instruments gave it new clothing. The teaching does not claim that every level is identical. It declares that lawful relation survives the change of scale. The form changes. The pattern remains. Look at your own repetitions. The conflict outside often grows from a conflict already rooted within, while the order you establish within begins shaping what can remain around you. Above and below meet. This is why your life can change locations yet preserve the same emotional pattern. You cut a branch, celebrate the empty space, and then watch another branch grow from the untouched root. The event is not primary. Your unseen pattern keeps producing visible forms. Hermeticism directs attention downward, beneath circumstance, toward the level where your recurring experience first receives nourishment. That is forbidden knowledge. Not forbidden because ink cannot hold it. Forbidden because any structure built upon your dependence must keep you staring at branches. Ritual can soothe you. Mechanism can free you. The priesthood guards the fruit. The initiate finds the seed. Follow the root upward through history, and names begin appearing in places you were taught to keep separate. Pythagoras is remembered through Greece, yet ancient accounts connect his formation with Egyptian learning and priestly instruction. Number becomes sacred there. For him, number is not dead arithmetic. It reveals proportion, harmony, and an intelligible order beneath appearances, as though the tree's geometry were already concealed inside the seed. Then comes Plato. His forms declare that visible things are not ultimate. The changing object participates in an intelligible pattern beyond its temporary appearance, and that vision echoes the Hermetic insistence that mind precedes manifestation. The object passes, pattern endures. The Kybalion later names this mentalism. Reality rests within an infinite living mind, beyond complete human comprehension. Its authors do not reduce spirit to your private thoughts. They point toward a universal mental ground from which every plane draws being. Your mind is not all, yet your mind participates. That distinction protects the root from vanity. You do not command the whole tree through personal desire, but you do influence what grows through the quality, direction, and persistence of your inner activity. Excuses preserve comfort. Fantasies flee embodiment. This is where Charles Haanel becomes useful. In the Master Key system, he treats thought as a causative power and repeatedly turns attention from outer effects toward inner causes. He writes in modern language. Yet his tree is ancient. The visible condition is an effect, while the formative pattern lies closer to consciousness, where attention and conviction quietly feed it. Haanel also draws upon the idea of succession, the strange legal truth that an heir receives more than isolated possessions. In older forms of inheritance, the successor steps into a continuing identity, carrying obligations and powers that existed before his arrival. You are the heir. You do not inherit a museum object. You inherit participation in a living tradition, and inheritance becomes real only when you assume what it asks of you. Blood is not required. Understanding is the lineage. Recognition is the claim. Practice proves succession. This is why the Kybalion addresses prepared ears. Wisdom is never truly mute, but its meaning remains closed until you can recognize the pattern beneath its words. The page waits. You may read the 7 principles as attractive ideas and remain on the outer bark. Or you may see mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender as one rooted system. Each principle feeds another. The Kybalion says differences among matter, energy, mind, and spirit arise through differing rates of vibration. This does not make them unrelated. It places them along a living continuity, like growth becoming wood, leaf, flower, and fruit without leaving the tree. Substance appears divided, law remains continuous. That insight passes directly into alchemy. The medieval alchemist speaks of furnaces, metals, dissolution, purification, and gold, while the deeper work concerns the transformation of the operator. Lead is a condition, gold is a condition. The laboratory language survives because symbols protect the teaching from hostile authorities and from minds eager for power without discipline. They pretended to work metals. They were often working themselves. Mental transmutation means changing the quality of a state by understanding its lawful relation to another. Fear and courage stand on one line. Hatred and love appear opposed, yet both involve intense emotional fixation. Polarity reveals the branch. Transmutation reaches the root. You do not beg a condition to disappear. You alter its degree, direction, and nourishment until another expression becomes possible. Haenel's mental chemistry carries this same impulse. The title itself points toward combination and transformation within consciousness, where ideas meet emotion and become forces that shape conduct. Thought alone is a seed. Feeling waters it. Repetition drives the root deeper, until the pattern appears so natural that you mistake its fruit for fate. It is not fate. It is cultivation repeated beyond memory. This is why traditions preserve ceremonies even after forgetting what those ceremonies were designed to cultivate. The outer action remains, but the inner operation fades. Fruit survives. Seed disappears. You were handed sacred gestures and denied the laws those gestures once trained you to use. You were taught to kneel without learning receptivity, to repeat words without directing vibration, and to confess effects without examining causes. The shell was protected. The mechanism was buried. Why was the root concealed? Why were only branches displayed? Why does this knowledge recognize you now? Because a teaching of causation threatens every system that requires permanent helplessness. Once you see participation, blame loses its throne, but so does blind submission. Shame says you are broken. Awareness says you are involved. One imprisons, one empowers. Participation does not mean condemning yourself for every wound. It means refusing to surrender your present power merely because another hand planted something in your soil. You choose nourishment now. At this very moment, the ancient root is not behind you. It is beneath you, alive wherever mind recognizes pattern and consciously alters what it feeds. You are not a spectator, you are the heir. The old tree has waited through empires, burnings, translations, disguises, and forgotten names. Its branches entered temples and schools, while its root remained hidden beneath the beliefs you inherited. Now your hand touches it. So if this knowledge is the root of everything that came after, the real question is who cut the trunk, and why the branches were allowed to survive without it. This teaching was not lost by accident. It was encrypted on purpose by those who decided you had to earn the decryption. They did not destroy the truth. They removed the legend from the map, scattered its symbols across centuries, then watched to see who could still recognize the territory. Most never did. They saw furnaces, metals, planets, angels, kings, and strange transformations. They assumed the old Hermetists were describing primitive chemistry or elaborate superstition. That was the disguise. The furnace was your concentrated awareness. The base metal was the unrefined mind. The fire was sustained attention, and the gold was consciousness freed from its own unconscious reactions. Alchemy drew maps. The territory was you. This is why the Hermetists rarely wrote plainly. Plain speech could be seized, condemned, and burned, while a symbol could pass through the gates unnoticed. Symbols survived judgment. Direct statements did not. But protection from persecutors was only half the purpose. The same code also protected the teaching from the merely curious, because curiosity collects maps without ever crossing the territory. You have seen this. A sentence reaches you, produces a moment of wonder, and is quickly replaced by the next fascination. The teaching requires more. It requires you to test the map against your own consciousness. Every symbol must become an inner location, every principle a road you actually walk. Otherwise, nothing opens. Why was it encoded? Why was it fragmented? Why was it placed where only the prepared could recognize it? Because knowledge changes its nature according to the consciousness holding it. In a disciplined mind, a principle becomes liberation. In a hungry mind, the same principle becomes a weapon. The map is neutral. The traveler is not. The Kybalion warns about the black adept, the consciousness that learns the laws of influence but remains ruled by appetite. Such a mind studies vibration to manipulate, polarity to divide, and mental causation to dominate. It knows the roads, it chooses the abyss. The white adept governs the self, the black adept governs others. There is the divide. This withholding was not sentimental secrecy, it was containment. The initiates understood that spiritual vocabulary does not produce spiritual character. Power reveals motive. So the teaching was veiled until the seeker demonstrated patience, restraint, and the ability to read beneath appearances. The unready reader encountered mythology. The ready reader found coordinates. Yet another force buried the map. Institutions needed intermediaries between you and the source. Their authority depended upon distance, because if the sacred law operates through your own consciousness, the gatekeeper loses his gate. The institution says access comes through us. Hermetic teaching says the source is already within. The institution centralizes, the principle radiates. That contrast changes everything. If mind participates in reality, then you are not merely receiving commands from a distant order. You are involved in the pattern appearing before you. This does not make you omnipotent. It makes you responsible. And responsibility is dangerous to any structure built upon dependence. A person who can read the territory directly becomes difficult to frighten, difficult to direct, and almost impossible to spiritually monopolize. So fragments remained acceptable. The whole map did not. A moral saying could survive because it appeared harmless. A proverb could cross borders because no authority feared a familiar phrase. As you sow, so shall you reap, survived as advice about conduct. Yet beneath it rests the Hermetic principle of cause and effect. Every inner movement enters a chain, and every chain eventually reaches expression. Nothing vanishes. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he also survived. You heard it as encouragement, but it carries a coordinate from the same hidden map. Mind precedes formation. James Allen developed this truth in 1903. He described the mind as something that always produces according to what is cultivated within it, whether the cultivation is deliberate or unconscious. His deeper point is unmistakable. Character, circumstance, effort, and thought are not isolated provinces. They are connected regions. Thought becomes direction. Repeated direction becomes character. Character shapes the roads you notice, the choices you make, and the consequences you repeatedly enter. The territory answers. Allen also insists that your possessions of mind and spirit are completed efforts, visions brought into form through sustained inner action. That is Hermetic causation in practical clothing. He offered a fragment. You may have carried that fragment for years. You may have repeated it, framed it, underlined it, or passed it to someone in pain. But without the legend, you could not see where it belonged. That is how the burial worked. Nothing had to disappear. The fragments only had to be separated from one another. A principle placed inside religion became morality. The same principle placed inside philosophy became abstraction. Placed inside early psychology, it became mental habit. Different labels, same territory. Even the old art of reading between the lines preserves this demand. The surface report gives one account, but the trained eye notices what the wording avoids and reconstructs the true position. Hermetic texts demand that eye. You read the symbol, then examine what it describes inside you. You compare the map with direct experience until the coded line becomes unmistakable. Then the disguise dissolves. In 1908, the publication of the Kybalion created a deliberate breach in this old system of concealment. Material once wrapped in temple language and alchemical symbolism appeared in inexpensive print. The wall cracked. William Walker Atkinson and the New Thought Current helped bring these ideas into the language of mind, habit, vibration, and directed consciousness. The teaching moved from guarded chambers into ordinary hands. That explains its peculiar tone. The book sounds partly like revelation and partly like a manual because it stands between two worlds. One voice preserves mystery, the other gives instructions. The ancient current says the laws are sacred. The modern current says the laws are usable. Both are true. New Thought did not create this territory. It translated sections of the map for a world beginning to speak in psychological rather than alchemical terms. That translation came at a cost. Some readers reduced the teaching to acquisition, using mind only to pursue money, status, and control. The warning returned. A map of consciousness can guide you beyond compulsion, or it can help compulsion become more efficient. Knowledge does not purify desire. It magnifies the direction already chosen. This is why readiness matters. You are the one who can finally read the legend. That identity is not praise. It is a demand placed upon your attention. To read the legend means seeing correspondence where others see coincidence. It means recognizing polarity beneath conflict, rhythm beneath reversal, and causation beneath the events called luck. The map becomes whole. You begin to notice that every surviving fragment points toward the same hidden center. Scripture, alchemy, new thought, and disciplined self-observation use different marks, yet they indicate one continuous territory. You have walked it unconsciously. Now you read. Right now, the buried teaching is no longer buried in the only place that matters. It is emerging within your ability to recognize what has always been visible. The symbols no longer distract you, they orient you. The persecutor could burn a manuscript. The institution could hide a road. The careless reader could mistake the drawing for the land itself. But recognition ends concealment. You are holding the map now, with the legend intact, and the first thing it reveals is that the universe is not made of matter at all. Put your hand on your chest and understand that not one particle beneath it has been still for a single instant since you were conceived. What feels solid is movement held in pattern, and what feels permanent is repetition moving too quickly for your senses to follow. Nothing rests. The Kybalion gives this as its second principle. Everything moves, everything vibrates, everything changes according to rate. Matter, mind, energy, and spirit are not separated by absolute walls. They differ in degree. This unlocks the way. Imagine a tuning fork resting on a table. It appears silent, yet its atoms remain active beneath the silence. Strike it, and the hidden motion becomes audible. The vibration was always there. Science is only beginning to glimpse what the Hermetic teaching declares with certainty. Atoms never come to rest. Even when cooled to absolute zero, they retain zero-point vibration, meaning stillness does not exist anywhere in the physical universe. Silence is not stillness. Solidity is not stillness. Sleep is not stillness. Nothing escapes motion. Your body is vibrating chemistry. Your thoughts are vibrating patterns. Your emotional states carry rhythms that alter your breath, muscles, hormones, attention, posture, and voice. You broadcast constantly. This is why the tuning fork matters. Strike one fork, then place an identical fork across the room, and the second begins to sing without being touched. The first does not travel across the room and strike it. Resonance does. The second fork answers because it can receive that rate. Something within it already corresponds. The first vibration merely awakens what was available. So it is with you. You enter a room and feel tension before a word is spoken. You meet someone and sense a familiarity your reasoning cannot explain. You hear a certain voice, and your body contracts before your conscious mind decides anything. This is sympathetic resonance. You have called it chemistry. You have called it intuition. You have called it dread. Different names. Same mechanism. The vibration surrounding you strikes something within you, and what matches begins to sound. You think the response came from nowhere. It came from correspondence. The fork answers the fork. Why does fear spread before facts arrive? Why does courage awaken courage in another heart? Why does the same pattern keep finding you under different names? Because your vibration is not private. Every state has a signature. Fear shortens breath and narrows perception. Shame lowers the voice, folds the posture, and teaches attention to search for rejection. Courage has another rate. Love changes what you notice, what you allow, and what you can hold without retreating. These are not vague decorations placed upon your life. They are organized states expressed through measurable bodily patterns. A feeling seems permanent only while its rate is being repeated. That distinction is forbidden because it returns power to you. If fear is an event that happens to you, you must wait for it to leave. If fear is a rate being sustained through attention, memory, breath, and expectation, then the rate can change. Grief honors absence. Believers become evidence. This does not mean you pretend fear is absent. A tuning fork cannot silence itself by denying its tone. You first hear the note clearly without shame, and then stop confusing the note with your identity. You are not the note. A state may be intense without being eternal. It may have occupied you without owning you. It may have sounded through you for decades and still be nothing more than a maintained frequency. Occupancy is not identity. The old language preserved in Hanel's source tradition speaks of occupancy as the deliberate taking of possession. That legal idea hides a spiritual fact. Whatever repeatedly occupies your attention begins to claim the inner chamber from which your vibration proceeds. Attention grants residence. A fearful image enters briefly. You return to it. You rehearse it, strengthen it, and let it strike your nervous system again and again. Soon the fork sings automatically. Then you call the tone reality. You say the world keeps proving your fear, yet the world is also responding to the signal you repeatedly make available. This is why the mirror in Chapter 2 kept returning the same reflection. The mirror did not condemn you. It answered the rate presented to it. Decision owns direction. Flattery feeds persona. Once you see participation, blame becomes unnecessary. You are not being accused of causing every wound or choosing every hardship. You are being shown where your influence begins. It begins with resonance. For decades, other hands strike your instrument. A parent's anxiety sounds through you. An authority's contempt awakens shame. A room filled with suspicion teaches your body to hum with defense. You learn their note. Eventually, no hand is required. A memory is enough. A glance is enough. Sometimes silence is enough. The inherited vibration continues because it has become familiar, and familiarity disguises itself as truth. You do not ask whether the tone is yours. You only notice that it is loud. Loudness proves nothing. The Kybalion places matter, mind, energy, and spirit along one vast continuum of vibration. What appears to be a difference in substance is often a difference in rate. Raise or lower the rate, and the expression changes. Water makes this visible without explaining the whole mystery. Yet the tuning fork lets you feel the mechanism directly. One rate summons its correspondence, while another passes without response. You recruit what matches. This is why repeated resentment seems to discover endless offenses. The vibration tunes your attention toward every confirming signal. It also calls forth responses from those already prepared to resonate with conflict. Then both forks grow louder. The same law works through courage. Hold a steady inner tone when panic surrounds you, and another heart may begin to steady without knowing why. Your presence becomes permission. No sermon is needed. This is close to the power hidden in the musical passage preserved with Wattle's source material, where sound quiets care and softens grief. Music reaches beneath argument because vibration does not ask the intellect for admission. It touches the matching structure directly. The deeper teaching is clear. You are affected by what you hear, but you also affect what can be heard. You receive vibration and you originate it. You are the chalice and the pourer. That is the identity. The instrument carries old tensions. The musician chooses what is reinforced. The instrument has a history, but the musician has direction. History repeats. Direction transforms. This is where the principle becomes dangerous to every system that depends on your unconscious reaction. If you believe your state is fixed, you remain easy to strike. A headline strikes you. An insult strikes you, a memory strikes you, and you sound on command. But awareness interrupts command. You begin by noticing the vibration before building a story around it. Tightness appears in your chest. Your breath becomes shallow. Hear the fork. Do not immediately name the future. Do not feed the tone with 10 imagined disasters. Let sensation reveal the rate without allowing thought to multiply it. Then introduce another tone. Lengthen the exhale. Straighten the body. Place attention upon an image of composure, gratitude, or courageous action that your system can genuinely receive. The shift may be subtle. A tuning fork does not become silent because you shout at it. Its vibration changes as energy changes. Your inner state responds in the same lawful way. Force creates strain. Alignment creates resonance. The New Thought writers understood that sustained thought is not empty fantasy. Wattles built his teaching around the disciplined holding of a constructive mental impression until action and circumstance begin organizing around it. The point is not wishing. The point is constancy. A scattered signal recruits scattered responses. A steady signal gains force through repetition. What you dwell upon becomes the note you practice. Practice becomes presence. Hanel's source tradition also points toward universal succession, the transfer of an entire position rather than one isolated possession. Spiritually understood, this means an old state does not surrender only one thought. When the ruling vibration changes, an entire family of reactions can lose authority together. The succession becomes complete. Fear once governs posture, speech, expectation, and choice. Courage enters as the ruling note, and each of those expressions begins to reorganize. You do not repair them separately, you change the rate. At this very moment, something is striking you. These words are vibration carried through a voice, entering your body as motion. You are not passively hearing them, you are answering. Notice what rises. Notice what resists. Beneath both is the instrument waiting for the musician to take possession. Your next state is not chosen once. It is tuned, sustained, and strengthened until the old resonance no longer governs what answers you. Everything moves. Your fear moves. Your shame moves. Your courage moves. So can you. You are a tuning fork that has been struck by everything around you for decades. But a fork does not know it is vibrating, and you are about to find out what does. You are not matter that learned to think. You are thought that agreed temporarily to look like matter. Everything around you insists otherwise. Yet the world's apparent solidity is the first veil. Touch the wall. Feel its resistance. Your senses report something final, separate and fixed. But your senses only translate what they can survive. They do not reveal reality. The first Hermetic principle cuts beneath every appearance. The all is mind and the universe is mental. This does not mean your thoughts merely influence matter. It means matter itself is a condition within mind. The story pivots now. A wave does not influence the ocean from outside. It is the ocean moving in a temporary shape. Its height, force and direction appear distinct, yet not one drop belongs to the wave alone. You are like that. You have been taught to call yourself a body moving through a universe. The Hermetic teaching reverses the arrangement. The universe moves as you, through the temporary form you call your body. You are not contained here. The Kybalion asks how the all could create anything when nothing exists outside it. It cannot reach beyond itself for raw material. There is no beyond, nor can it divide itself. If the all surrendered part of itself, it would no longer be all. If it multiplied itself, something would be added to what is already complete. Both possibilities collapse under their own contradiction. Only one path remains. The all creates mentally, just as you form an image without gathering physical materials. You do not carve a memory from stone. You do not assemble a dream from pieces stored beneath your bed. You generate it within consciousness. Yet the dream is not outside you. Its mountains are made from the same mind as its rivers. Its stranger and its sky arise within a single field, though they seem separate while the dream continues. So it is here. The ocean does not manufacture waves from some foreign substance. It moves within itself. Every crest is ocean, every hollow is ocean, and even the foam that vanishes remains nothing but ocean. The forms change, the essence stays. This is the forbidden force of the first principle. It dissolves the comfortable distance between the creator and the created. It leaves you nowhere to hide from the life moving through you. Habit guards yesterday. Pilots follow vision. As long as you believe you are a fragment thrown into an alien world, fear makes perfect sense. Events seem to arrive from outside. Circumstances become enormous waves coming to crush something small. But you are not small. You are the wave that remembered it was the ocean. Read that inwardly. Do not turn it into a slogan. A slogan decorates the surface, while this recognition changes what the surface is made of. Your separateness is functional, not final. The wave has a location, a duration, and a recognizable form. It can rise higher than another wave. It can break earlier. None of this gives it an independent substance. Its substance is the sea. In the same way, your name marks a pattern. Your memories outline it. Your body gives it a visible edge. But no edge can sever you from the living mind in which that edge appears. Science is only beginning to glimpse this. An atom is roughly 99.9999% empty space. The solidity of your body, your chair, and this room is an interpretation, not a substance. The surface feels solid. The depths say otherwise. This does not prove the Hermetic teaching, because the first principle reaches beyond the measurements of instruments. Still, it loosens the grip of appearance. What seems dense is already far stranger than your senses admit. Matter is not the opposite of mind. Matter is mind appearing at a slower, denser mode of expression, like water taking on a form that hides its fluid origin. The Kybalion connects these differences to vibration. Matter, energy, mind, and spirit are not sealed kingdoms. They are degrees of manifestation, distinguished by their modes and rates. The ocean remains one. A calm current and a violent crest look different because movement changes. The substance does not become another substance. It expresses another condition. This is where correspondence enters. The ancient formula of above and below is not decorative mysticism. It is a way of reading the whole through the part. A wave carries the chemistry of the ocean from which it rises. Your inner life carries correspondence too. What occurs within you is not locked inside a private chamber. Thought is movement within the same mental field that appears as circumstance, relationship, action, and consequence. The scale changes, but the pattern remains. The inner tide becomes visible. The Kybalion reasons from your creative power toward the creative activity of the all. You create mental images without subtracting pieces from yourself. Your awareness permeates what you imagine while remaining greater than the image. As below, so above. You cannot comprehend infinite living mind completely. A wave cannot stand outside the ocean and measure its total depth, yet it can recognize the substance moving through its own rise. That recognition is enough. The old New Thought writer Charles Harnell called his work mental chemistry because thought does not remain an idle ornament. Inner elements combine. Their union produces tendencies, decisions, and visible conditions. His language points toward participation. Harnell's use of legendary strength and impossible strides carries a hidden lesson. The mind first enlarges the possible inwardly. The visible step follows the mental permission. This is not fantasy replacing action. Fantasy escapes the ocean. Imagination directs the wave. You still act. You still choose, speak, work, refuse, and persist. But action no longer begins with the assumption that you are powerless matter waiting for external forces to grant permission. The center shifts. You are not a thing that has thoughts. You are a thought that has taken shape. You are a movement of mind temporarily given a face and a voice. That statement carries responsibility. If you are merely a victim of an external universe, every inner pattern is harmless until someone else notices it. Resentment can be rehearsed in secret. Fear can be worshipped quietly. The ocean still receives it. Every repeated thought becomes a manner of moving. Every cherished belief teaches your wave how to rise. What you continually broadcast inwardly shapes the quality of your participation outwardly. This is not blame. Blame belongs to separation. Responsibility belongs to remembrance. Blame says a broken wave deserves punishment. Responsibility says the water can change its motion. One imprisons identity in the past, while the other restores creative power in the present. You cannot control every visible swell. Other currents meet yours. Larger rhythms move through histories, families, bodies, and civilizations. Yet you are never absent. Your freedom begins with the movement you consent to continue. You may not have chosen the first fear. You choose whether fear becomes your permanent rhythm. That choice reaches far. A private conviction is never merely private within a mental universe. It enters your posture, your timing, your language, and your decisions. Then it returns through consequences that appear external. The mirror is fluid. This is why unconscious creation feels like fate. You send a pattern into the ocean, forget the sending, and tremble when the pattern returns as a wave. The returning motion seems foreign because its origin is hidden. Awareness ends that illusion. Not instantly, not theatrically. It ends each time you recognize your participation before repeating the old movement. Right now, notice the identity beneath your history. Not the frightened crest, not the foam produced by yesterday's collision. Feel the water itself. You are not inside the all as a pebble lies inside a jar. You exist within it as a movement exists within the ocean. There is intimacy here deeper than closeness, because closeness still requires two. There is only mind. Your life is not happening against the universe. It is happening as an expression within it. The wave rises, but the ocean provides its substance, power, law, and return. Most will never hear this, and many who hear it will protect their separation because separation preserves the right to remain unconscious. Remembrance removes that refuge. It gives you power and demands participation in the same breath. So why do you still feel separate? What hidden rhythm keeps carrying you back? But if you are the ocean, then why does your life still rise and fall on a schedule you never chose? Every high you have ever had sent you a bill, and you paid it 3 days later without ever connecting the two. Tuesday lifted you beyond yourself. Thursday emptied the room inside you. You called Thursday failure. You called it weakness, punishment, or proof that the light had left you. But the light never left. The pendulum returned. This is the principle of rhythm, and it is more intimate than the ticking inside a clock. Everything advances and retreats, rises and falls, gathers and releases. The outward swing prepares the return. Nothing escapes rhythm. Your confidence expands, then contracts. Your devotion burns, then cools. And the height of the burning determines the depth of the cooling. The swing balances itself. The Kybalion reveals that the movement back is equal to the movement out. This does not mean every pleasant morning mathematically creates a miserable night. It means unchecked emotional momentum seeks its counterweight. You have felt this. After intense certainty comes doubt. After frantic productivity comes exhaustion. And after the desperate need to be seen comes the desire to disappear. You blamed yourself. That blame placed you deeper inside the clock. Instead of observing its mechanism, you became the hand being carried around the face. Each mood announced the hour, and you believed the hour announced your identity. It never did. Your downswing is movement, not meaning. It is the tide withdrawing from the shore of your awareness. You suffer because you declare the low tide permanent while it is already preparing to turn. Deserts strip illusion. Birth enters mystery. Most will never hear this distinction. They spend their lives adjusting themselves to whatever hour the clock displays. Praise makes them expand, silence makes them contract, and another person's anger determines the weather of their inner world. They are effects. The Kybalion says the multitude is carried by environment, suggestion, desire, and the stronger wills surrounding it. Your life remains mechanical when every feeling is caused from outside. Someone speaks and your pendulum moves. A message arrives, a memory surfaces, a face changes expression, and suddenly your entire inner tide belongs to that face. This closes the trap. Why does one sentence control your whole day? Why does one absence become a verdict? Why does one dark hour make you forget every dawn? Because repetition teaches the clock what time to keep. Science is only beginning to glimpse this through a simple truth. Neurons that fire together wire together. Repeated states physically thicken their own pathways, which is why an unexamined mood becomes a personality within months. Read that inwardly. The mood is temporary. The rehearsed mood becomes a pathway. The pathway becomes automatic, and the automatic pattern begins speaking with the authority of I am, but it is not you. A fearful state repeated daily does not reveal your essence. It strengthens one end of a scale. The clock keeps returning there because your attention has wound its mechanism. Attention winds the clock. This is where rhythm joins polarity. The Kybalion teaches that apparent opposites are often the same force expressed at different degrees. Heat and cold belong to one scale. Just as love and hate occupy different regions of emotional intensity, fear and courage also meet. Poverty and wealth meet. They are not identical conditions, but they exist along continuums that consciousness can travel. Nothing needs destruction. You cannot destroy cold as though it were a separate substance. You introduce heat and move along the scale. In the same way, you do not tear fear from your being. You increase the degree of courage until fear loses command. Hate clings. Love embraces. Both reveal concentrated relationship. Indifference sits elsewhere on the scale with almost no emotional charge. That is why hatred can turn into fierce love, and love can fall into hatred when the pendulum is unconscious. The energy remains, its degree changes. The old Hermetic writers linked these principles because they are gears within the same hidden clockwork. Rhythm supplies the swing. Polarity supplies the scale across which the swing appears to move. Cause and effect supplies power. Without that third principle, you merely rename your captivity. You say this is rhythm, while continuing to obey it. You recognize the clock yet remain fastened to its hand. Recognition is not mastery. The guarded secret is neutralization. The initiate does not smash the pendulum because the pendulum belongs to manifested life. The initiate refuses to ride the part of the swing that leads downward. This sounds impossible. Yet you already perform a crude version whenever you remain calm around someone who expects your anger. The lower swing still moves through the room. It simply fails to move through your center. The storm continues below. You polarize toward the upper end by placing attention there before the old momentum claims it. You do not pretend sadness is joy. You refuse to let sadness become the ruler, the judge, and the name engraved upon you. The feeling moves, you remain. Neutralization is not numbness. Numbness is another unconscious position on the clock. Neutralization is deliberate residence at a higher degree, while lower rhythm spends its force beneath awareness. The sleeper suppresses. The initiate transcends. This is why resistance often worsens the downswing. What you fight receives attention, and attention supplies tension to the mechanism. You grip the descending hand while begging it to stop, then mistake your grip for fate. Release the hand. The Kybalion's account of mental creation gives the deeper foundation. The all does not require material outside itself to bring forth manifestation. Creation occurs within infinite living mind, and your own mental imagery reflects that pattern by correspondence. Your inner causation matters. You create mentally before you create behaviorally. A repeated image, assumption, or emotional posture becomes an initiating cause. It enters the clockwork unseen, then returns as speech, decision, posture, and circumstance. Mind precedes motion. This does not mean every event is your personal invention. It means your participation determines whether an event becomes a passing hour or a permanent calendar. Conviction transcends time. Chains teach weight. The difference is freedom. The Kybalion also describes matter, energy, mind, and spirit through degrees of vibration. Different expressions arise through different rates. Polarity is therefore not fantasy. It is the possibility of changing degree within the field you already occupy. You shift the rate. A frightened thought vibrates through your muscles, breathing, focus, and choices. A courageous thought, held steadily, organizes the same life force differently. The substance is not discarded, its expression is raised. This is transmutation. William Walker Atkinson and the old New Thought current insisted that thought is not an idle ornament. Thought selects, directs, and conditions experience. What you repeatedly entertain becomes an active cause within your days. Now the circuit closes. Rhythm explains why the state moves. Polarity explains where it can move. Cause and effect reveals who winds the clock and who merely reports the hour. You choose causation. The next downswing is not your enemy. It is the exact moment the teaching becomes real. When heaviness arrives, you notice the hand descending without descending with it. Name the movement softly. Feel its pull without signing your identity over to it. Then place attention upon the nearest higher degree available. Not ecstasy, stability. Do not leap from despair to bliss, because the distance invites disbelief. Move from despair toward endurance, from endurance toward willingness, and from willingness toward quiet command. Degree by degree, the tide changes allegiance. You become cause. Right now, your clock is responding to attention. Every second you witness without obeying weakens the old pathway, and every deliberate return strengthens another. The lower swing may continue, but it no longer owns your name. You are not the pendulum. You are the sovereign standing at the still point. The hour moves around you. The tide rises and retreats beneath you, while awareness remains where rhythm cannot drag it. Stand there tonight. There is a place inside the swing where the initiate stands untouched. And it can be reached tonight, with nothing but your attention and about 20 minutes. Stop trying to get rid of the feeling. A blacksmith does not throw iron away because it has the wrong shape. He places it in the furnace because the shape is not final. Neither is your state. You have been taught to fight fear, bury resentment, and shout abundance over the sensation of lack. Yet the harder you strike cold iron, the more stubborn it becomes. Force without heat only exhausts the hand. This is the hidden error. An unwanted state is not an enemy invading you. It is mental substance held at a particular degree, waiting for the correct heat. The Kybalion calls this mental transmutation. Changing the quality of a mental state by changing its degree. You do not destroy it, you move it. The Hermetic principle of polarity reveals why this is possible. Opposites are not separate substances. They are different degrees along the same scale. Fear and courage belong together. Resentment and release occupy one pole. Lack and sufficiency are degrees of the same inward measurement. Cold is not defeated by attacking it. Heat is increased. Darkness is not dragged from the room. The degree of light changes, and darkness loses its claim. Flesh records thinking. The creator adjusts. Most will never use this because struggle feels more righteous than transmutation. Fighting gives you an enemy. The forge gives you responsibility. Responsibility is hotter. When fear appears, you usually make one of two mistakes. You suppress it, forcing the iron beneath the workbench, or you cover it with an affirmation polished to look like gold. Neither changes the metal. Suppression drives the state deeper into the nervous system. Affirmation places a sentence over an unchanged sensation. Your mouth says, "I am fearless," while your throat contracts and your gut prepares for danger. The body knows. The words may be beautiful. The frequency beneath them remains untouched, so the old state continues shaping your choices from below. You are decorating iron that has never entered the fire. Polarization works differently. It does not argue with the state. It finds the scale to which that state belongs, then raises the degree deliberately. Nothing is rejected, and nothing is falsely renamed. This is alchemy. James Allen teaches that your mind always brings forth according to what is cultivated within it. Neglect does not leave the inner ground empty. It allows whatever has taken root to reproduce itself. The same law operates in the forge. Every repeated state becomes easier to heat into the same shape. Dread rehearsed becomes dread expected, and dread expected begins selecting what you notice. Attention feeds the furnace. Allen goes further. Character, circumstance, and thought are intimately joined, because sustained thought eventually becomes completed action and visible result. Your outer life is not proof of your entire being, but it reveals which inner material has been worked repeatedly. That is the danger. A state does not remain private. Resentment shapes your voice before it shapes your relationship. Lack narrows your decisions before it narrows your circumstances. The inner forge leaves marks. Why does suppression make the feeling return? Why does affirmation collapse under pressure? Why does polarity succeed where both fail? Because suppression refuses the metal. Affirmation denies its present temperature. Polarization accepts what is here and changes what it becomes. Acceptance is not surrender. The first movement is exact. When the state rises, name it aloud using one word. Dread, resentment, lack, shame, or whatever is actually present, do not explain it. Explanation adds fuel to the story. Naming identifies the metal. One clean word separates the raw state from the maze of images, accusations, and predictions attached to it. Say it once. Then locate the state physically. Find where it grips you most clearly. The throat, sternum, belly, jaw, or shoulders. Place your attention directly inside that sensation and remain there without commentary for 60 seconds. No fixing, no judging. You may feel pressure, heat, trembling, hollowness, or a tight band beneath the ribs. Let the sensation exist without giving it a history. Every time your mind produces a sentence, return to the physical vibration. The story begins cooling. After 60 seconds, the state is no longer an endless argument about your life. It becomes movement in the body. It becomes pressure, pulse, temperature, and charge. Now it can change. This distinction is crucial. You cannot forge a story because every sentence creates another sentence. But you can forge sensation because sensation already moves. The furnace is attention. Ordinary attention intensifies whatever narrative it follows. Hermetic attention strips the narrative away and holds the energy steady. The lower degree is exposed without being condemned. Then identify the true opposite. Do not reach for a generic positive word. The opposite of resentment is not happiness, it is release. The opposite of lack is not sudden wealth, it is sufficiency. Precision matters. The opposite of dread may be trust. The opposite of shame may be dignity. The opposite of helplessness may be participation. False opposites remain cold. Specific opposites conduct heat. Next, recall one lived memory of that upper degree. It need not be dramatic. Choose a moment when you released a small offense, had enough for one day, trusted one decision, or stood with quiet dignity. Use what is real. Do not repeat a phrase about that memory. Enter its bodily trace. Notice how your chest felt, how your breath moved, and how your posture changed when that degree was alive in you. Hold that feeling for 90 seconds. At first, the lower state may resist. Stay with the physical signature of the remembered degree until the chest changes temperature. Warmth may spread, pressure may loosen, or the breath may deepen without command. That change is the climb. You are not pretending the lower end never existed. You are increasing the degree of its own pole. The iron remains iron, yet its form becomes available. The fighter condemns, the blacksmith transforms. This is why you must recall a lived moment rather than invent a magnificent fantasy. Your body recognizes experience. A small, authentic memory carries more fire than a grand sentence you do not believe. Truth heats faster. An affirmation says abundance while lack still contracts the gut. Polarization finds sufficiency as a remembered bodily fact, then sustains it until the contraction changes. Afterward, words may arise naturally, but they are no longer doing the work. The frequency comes first, the sentence follows. Practice this when the stakes are low. Transmute irritation before attempting rage. Move unease before it hardens into dread. Every honest movement strengthens your ability to remain conscious at the furnace. Skill grows by use. Allen's teaching becomes severe here. Powers and possessions are thoughts brought to completion through effort. A repeated state becomes a tendency becomes an action presses itself into circumstance. Your inner work is material. This does not mean you blame yourself for every event. Blame belongs to shame. Anger grips embers. You are the blacksmith of your own state. That identity carries no punishment. It returns the hammer to your hand. You no longer wait for the world to cool before you become steady. You heat the metal now, name the state, locate the vibration, find its precise upper pole, then inhabit one real memory of that degree until your body answers. Under 3 minutes, do this right now, and you will discover that emotion is not a prison but workable substance. You now know how to change what you feel in under 3 minutes. What remains is how to change what your life is made of, and that requires a different instrument entirely. Wanting something has never once, in the entire history of the world, produced it. Wanting only announces the distance between your hand and the life you desire. You can stand before stone for years and wish it into a statue. The stone remains silent because desire has no edge, no direction, no disciplined image guiding the hand. Something else is required. The seventh principle reveals it through gender, not merely physical gender, but the hidden polarity operating within mind itself. The masculine directs, the feminine generates. Within you, the masculine is will, focused attention, and the decision to strike one precise place. The feminine is imagination, receptivity, and the power to conceive the form hidden inside the stone. Neither creates alone. Will without imagination keeps striking, but sees no figure worth releasing. It produces strain, grinding effort, forced action, and finally burnout. Imagination without will sees endless angels inside the marble, yet never lifts the chisel. It produces daydreaming, elaborate vision boards, emotional intoxication, and no movement. One forces without seeing, the other sees without forming. Hold both. Most people will never hear this because the world trains you to choose a side. You are praised either for relentless effort or for limitless dreaming, while the marriage of both remains hidden. This is the forbidden union. The Kybalion describes gender as present on every plane. In mental terms, one pole initiates and directs, while the other receives, nourishes, and brings forth. The names matter less than the function. Direction enters receptivity, and conception becomes expression. This is creation. The three initiates explain that creation does not require material taken from somewhere outside infinite mind. Mental creation uses no foreign substance, yet the creating intelligence permeates what it conceives. As above, so below. Your inner practice follows that same correspondence. You do not begin by attacking circumstances as though life were an enemy standing outside you. You begin with form. A sculptor does not strike randomly and call the debris progress. The sculptor holds an image, studies the stone, and allows every movement to serve what is already inwardly complete. Your attention is the chisel. Your imagination reveals the form. Your will delivers the stroke. This is why scattered effort accomplishes so little. Every hour of anxious labor may be another blow delivered without a design. Activity is not direction. Exhaustion is not mastery. You already know this feeling. You act, react, plan, revise, and push harder. Yet the condition refuses to change because no single form governs your movements. Words describe belief. Illness occupies thought. The undisciplined mind asks the stone what it might become. The disciplined mind enters the chamber already knowing. Why does effort fail when desire feels sincere? Why do vivid dreams dissolve when morning arrives? Why does your life keep reproducing forms you claim you no longer want? Because the chisel and image remain divided. You imagine one condition while directing attention toward another. You picture freedom, then spend the day examining bondage. You ask for peace, then rehearse conflict. You claim abundance, then give every inward stroke to absence. The stone obeys the blows. It does not respond to the statue you occasionally admire. It yields to the places you repeatedly strike. That is the severity of the principle. It is also its mercy. Nothing is condemning you. Your present form is not a sentence imposed by a hostile power. It is the accumulated shape given by attention, imagination, emotion, and action. Seeking confirms distance. Pride defends image. Once you see your participation, you recover the chisel. You stop begging the stone to change itself. You are the sculptor of the invisible. Charles Haanel understood that directed thought requires command of the body first. In the Master Key system, his foundation exercise begins with something almost offensively simple. Sit still. It sounds easy. It is not. The body has learned to interrupt command with every itch, adjustment, tightening, and restless impulse. Each movement says that sensation commands attention, rather than attention commanding sensation. So, you train at the stone. Choose the same seat and the same time every day. Give the practice 20 to 30 minutes without bargaining over whether today feels favorable. Mood waits for inspiration. Discipline establishes conditions. For the first 5 minutes, remain completely still. Make no deliberate movement, not one. Do not scratch, shift, straighten clothing, or search for a more spiritual posture. Arrange yourself beforehand, then become motionless. The purpose is not punishment. You are teaching the instrument that will has entered the room. At first, the stone resists. Your body invents urgent reasons to move because old patterns protect themselves through trivial commands. Let them pass. Each unfulfilled impulse sharpens the chisel. You discover that an urge can exist without becoming an action. That discovery is enormous. After 5 minutes, bring forward one single image. Hold it for another 5 minutes without narration, plot, explanation, or words. See only the form. If your fulfilled condition includes a home, do not imagine a long journey toward acquiring it. Hold the weight of its key in your palm. Feel its edges. Notice its temperature. If your condition concerns restored relationship, do not stage an entire drama. Hear one line spoken in one particular room and let that line imply completion. Keep it small. A true sculptor works at the exact edge where form meets excess stone. Your image must be precise enough to occupy, yet simple enough to remain steady. Mental chatter is excess stone. Cut nothing wildly. Return to the image. During the remaining time, occupy the completed condition in the present tense. Do not watch yourself from a distance as though observing someone luckier. Enter it. Feel the key's weight from within your own hand. Hear the room from the place where your body sits. Receive the confirming words as spoken to you now. Allow one sensory fact to establish the whole condition. This is mental occupancy. The old legal idea of occupancy concerned deliberately taking possession. Hunnell's source material points toward this ancient distinction because possession begins with an advised act, not a passing wish. You inwardly take possession. You do not plead with the finished form. You inhabit it. The beggar imagines getting. The creator occupies having. This does not mean pretending that visible facts have already rearranged themselves. It means choosing the mental cause from which your next perception, decision, and action emerge. Mind precedes form. The Kybalion presents the universe as mental, while still acknowledging that infinite living mind exceeds ordinary understanding. You need not comprehend the whole stone to make the next true cut. You need alignment. Science is only beginning to glimpse how attention shapes perception, how repeated mental rehearsal strengthens patterns, and how the nervous system responds to vividly imagined experience. Hermetic teaching goes further. What you steadily occupy inwardly organizes your relationship with conditions. It alters what you notice. It changes which actions feel available. Then the outer stone shifts. Do not turn this into frantic visualization. Frantic effort is will trying to replace imagination with force. Do not turn it into pleasant escape. Pleasant escape is imagination refusing the authority of will. The will chooses, the imagination conceives. Together they generate. At the end of the sitting, seal the work with one I am statement in the present tense. Speak it once, calmly and audibly if privacy permits. I am secure in my chosen work, then stop. Do not repeat it until intensity becomes anxiety. Repetition used to deepen calm is different from repetition used to force belief, and you will feel the difference immediately. The Hermetists warned against the doubted demand. A demand compulsively repeated announces that you do not believe it has entered the creative depth. One statement seals the cut. Leave the stone alone. Carry yourself through the day without digging into the image to see whether it has worked. Your task is not to keep striking the same point from fear. Your task is fidelity. Return tomorrow at the same time and in the same seat. Still the body, hold the image, occupy the completed condition, and seal it once, 20 to 30 minutes. Your outer actions will begin changing before the final form appears. A conversation becomes obvious, an old habit feels foreign, or an opportunity becomes visible where yesterday you saw nothing. Follow the clean movement. Do not worship the sign, but do not dismiss it. The sculptor recognizes each falling fragment as evidence that the hidden form is nearing release. Starting now, your will chooses the place, your imagination reveals the figure, and your disciplined attention makes the cut. Do this for 30 days and something will begin to happen that you will almost certainly misread as coincidence, so you had better learn the signs. The evidence you are waiting for will arrive so quietly that your instinct will be to call it luck. You expect thunder above the garden, yet the first movement happens beneath the soil, where no eye can confirm it. That is the test. A seed breaks open in darkness. Its old form collapses before its new form appears, and from above the garden still looks unchanged. You may call this failure. It is not. The Kybalion teaches that every effect has a cause even when the cause remains hidden from your senses. Your inner cultivation begins the chain, but the visible fruit stands at the far end of it. Between them lies patience. This is where your understanding becomes real. It is easy to trust a principle after it produces evidence, but the deeper practice is to remain aligned while the soil remains silent. Silence is not absence. James Allen compared your mind to a garden because it always produces according to what is cultivated there. Neglect also cultivates. Doubt also plants. Everything bears fruit. Yet the first fruit is rarely money, recognition, or some dramatic rearrangement of your circumstances. The first fruit is a shortened recovery time. Watch closely. The same provocation arrives. The same sentence touches the same old wound, but instead of carrying the sting for 4 days, you carry it for 4 hours. That gap is proof. Nothing outside may appear different. The event repeats, the voice sounds familiar, and the old emotional pathway opens beneath your feet. But you return faster, Knowing inhabits presence. The creator redirects. Your old state becomes trapped inside the event, while your cultivated state passes through it without building a home there. This is mentalism made visible. Your world begins inside the quality of thought you permit to remain. The thought that visits is not decisive. The thought you continue feeding is, you choose the crop. At first you may still feel anger, fear, jealousy, or shame. Transformation does not mean that no weed ever enters your garden. It means you recognize the weed before it covers the ground. Recognition changes everything. You stop confusing an emotion with an identity. You experience the weather of the mind without surrendering the entire season to it. The sting still comes. The residence shortens. This is why the change is easy to miss. You are trained to measure the garden by visible blossoms, but the wiser measurement is how quickly you stop watering what harms you. 4 days become 4 hours, 4 hours become 40 minutes. Then something loosens. The next sign feels less like arrival and more like removal. Conversations that once held your attention become exhausting, habits that once comforted you feel strangely empty, and familiar relationships no longer meet you at the same depth. The garden starts subtracting. This feels like loss because the old growth occupied real space. Even a thorn can become familiar when you have lived beside it long enough. Familiarity imitates belonging. The principle of vibration explains the change without sentimentality. As your inner tone changes, what once resonated with you no longer receives the same response. Nothing needs to explode. Invitations simply stop attracting you. Repeated complaints lose their flavor, old performances become difficult to sustain, and the approval you once chased begins to feel expensive. You are not being punished, you are being pruned. The old self accumulates, the awakened self releases. What matched your former frequency falls away because you no longer supply the energy that kept it rooted. Still, subtraction can hurt. An empty patch looks barren before it looks available. You may rush to refill it with another distraction, another attachment, or another version of the same exhausting exchange. Do not rush. The cleared soil is sacred. It is the first place where a different future can take root without competing against yesterday's growth. Loss comes first. Liberation reveals itself later. The old New Thought writers understood that an inner cause must eventually shape outward expression. William Walker Atkinson preserved stories in which a brief message of love crossed oceans and altered the emotional condition of the receiver. The message looked small, yet its force did not depend on its size. A few words carried attention, affection, and meaning across immense distance, proving that invisible influence can produce visible renewal. Your cultivation works likewise. A thought consistently charged with conviction becomes more than an idle sentence. It enters your posture, your decisions, your tolerance, and the boundaries you no longer betray. Then the outer garden answers. This does not mean every circumstance is a complete portrait of your character. James Allen is more exact than that. He teaches that your conditions correspond with active elements in your inner life, while your deepest character continues unfolding through cultivation. The fruit reveals a process. This brings the third sign. What you notice changes. The street is the same, the inbox is the same, even the city appears unchanged, yet openings begin appearing where you once saw walls. A forgotten name catches your attention, a quiet invitation feels timely, or a sentence you would have ignored suddenly becomes instruction. The opening was already there. Correspondence changes what you are tuned to receive. As the inner garden becomes ordered, your attention recognizes outer conditions that correspond with that order. You see differently. The principle of correspondence is not decoration for mystical conversation. It declares that patterns echo across levels, and the pattern you stabilize within determines what becomes meaningful without. The outer reflects, the inner selects. This is why two versions of you can walk down the same street and inhabit different realities. Your old state notices confirmation of defeat. Your cultivated state notices usable ground. The street never moved, you did. Most will never hear this because spectacle is easier to sell than perception. Yet the true sign is not that reality suddenly performs for you. The sign is that you finally recognize where reality has been inviting your participation. Attention is a harvest. The source attributed to Mabel Collins presses toward the desire to know the real truth beneath appearances. That desire matters here because surface reports can mislead you. You must read deeper. A garden can appear dead while roots organize beneath it. Another can appear lush while invasive growth quietly consumes every useful plant. Appearance is immediate. Truth develops. Why has nothing happened? Why is the soil still empty? Why should you continue trusting what you cannot yet see? Those questions expose the fatal error. The beginner digs up the seed to inspect the root. You affirm in the morning, inspect at noon, despair by evening, and plant again the next day. The soil never settles. Checking whether it is working feels responsible, but it reintroduces the vibration of doubt and lack. You tell the seed to grow while repeatedly declaring that growth is absent. The command divides itself. Faith plants, doubt excavates. The gardener cannot cultivate and interrogate the same seed every morning. Leave it buried. The principle of rhythm also moves through this hidden interval. Every garden has expansion and contraction, visible growth and quiet preparation. You cannot abolish rhythm. You can stop mistaking its inward swing for defeat. A quiet week is not reversal. An uncomfortable clearing is not abandonment, and a delayed result is not proof that the law has forgotten you. The law remains exact. Cause and effect does not promise instant blossoms. It promises correspondence between sustained cultivation and eventual expression. Your task is continuity. This is where you stop demanding emotional excitement as evidence. Excitement rises quickly and disappears just as quickly, while conviction becomes calm enough to survive an ordinary day. Calm is stronger. You begin choosing thoughts without ceremony. You leave certain conversations without guilt, recover from disturbances without worshipping them, and notice opportunities without begging them to rescue you. That is mastery growing. Gender, in the Hermetic sense, reveals another hidden movement in the God. Every creation contains a receptive phase and a generative phase. First you receive, then you form. You cannot force the receptive soil to display what is still taking shape within it. Your responsibility is to protect the conditions of emergence. No digging. You are the gardener who no longer digs up the seed. You are not the anxious inspector demanding proof. You are the steady cultivator who understands what silence contains. This identity changes your timing. Right now, measure transformation by what no longer controls you. Notice the shorter wound, the cleared ground, and the opening your former attention could not perceive. Then keep tending. Your gifts and capacities are thoughts completed through effort, as Alan teaches. The fruit is not separate from cultivation. It is cultivation made visible. Trust the interval. The garden does not need your supervision. It needs only that you keep planting. And there is one thing left to plant tonight. The Kybalion ends not with an answer but with a door left standing open, and you are the only one who can walk through it. Behind you lies everything you have heard. Before you moves a current that cannot be understood from the shore. This is the hidden test. The Hermetic teaching is never merely information. Information can be stored, repeated, displayed, and forgotten. This teaching must move through you, or it stops where you stand. It is a current. For millennia, its principles pass from mind to mind and hand to hand. Sometimes they travel beneath sacred symbols. Sometimes they disappear beneath ordinary words, waiting for a prepared mind to recognize their pressure. Now they reach you. This does not mean you are superior. It means you are responsible. A current grants no crown without also giving a direction. Most will miss that. They collect the principles as impressive ideas. Mentalism becomes a phrase, correspondence becomes decoration, and vibration becomes something spoken only when life already feels easy. But the river knows. You have lived inside these laws long before you learned their names. Vibration changes your inner state before you explain it. Polarity reveals that hatred and love differ in degree, while rhythm carries your moods between their familiar banks. Cause follows cause. You do not need to believe any of this. The river does not ask whether you believe in its current before it carries you. Belief may sharpen your attention, but law does not wait for agreement. That is the turning. Until now, you may have lived downstream of causes you never consciously selected. A remark enters your mind, becomes a mood, becomes an action, then returns as circumstance. You call the result fate because you did not notice the first movement. Now you notice. Winter hides increase. Waking enacts impressions. The sleeping mind is carried by the current, while the awakened mind begins choosing where its hand enters the water. This is Hermetic responsibility. The Kybalion never offers power without consequence. It warns that every cause bears its effect, and every effect another chain of causes. Cleverness does not place you beyond the law. Nothing does. You can influence another mind. You can use rhythm, suggestion, emotional pressure, and carefully chosen words to move someone against their deeper nature. You may even appear to succeed, but the current returns. When you violate another will, you shape your own inner substance around violation. When you create fear to gain obedience, Fear becomes part of the cause moving through you. The effect may take another form, but it belongs to the same current. Cause and effect makes no exceptions for the clever. The manipulator thinks mastery means controlling the river. The hermetist knows mastery begins with governing the point where the river passes through the self. One seeks domination, the other seeks alignment. The difference is invisible. An old passage preserved among the source fragments speaks of wise councils gathered to declare a union lawful. Yet it also turns sharply, warning that figures dressed as cardinal virtues may conceal cardinal sins and hollow hearts. Outward sanction does not purify inward cause. The robe proves nothing. This ancient contrast matters because Hermetic knowledge magnifies what is already guiding you. If your motive is vanity, the principles strengthen vanity. If your motive is liberation, they strengthen your capacity to liberate. The current reveals intent. Another old scene describes two rulers surrounded by such splendor that whichever stands nearest receives the greater praise. Presence commands perception. What fills the eye begins to govern judgment. Your mind works similarly. Whatever state you repeatedly place before your inner attention appears dominant. Fear becomes king because fear remains present. Resentment receives praise because resentment occupies the center of your awareness. Attention feeds the current. This is why mentalism is not a license to pretend. It is a demand to become conscious of what occupies your inner field. The thought held nearest becomes the cause most likely to enter speech, posture, choice, and consequence. The hidden becomes visible. Correspondence then shows you the same movement at different depths. The conflict outside echoes a division inside. The order you establish within begins appearing in the choices made around you. As within, so through. Gender gives every creation its receptive and projective movement. Something is received, then something is formed. You take in an impression, incubate it, and send it outward, carrying your signature. You are always conducting. That is why the teaching survives only through living contact. A written page can preserve its outline, but only your practice gives it motion. The current waits for a conductor. Tonight, that is you. Why did these words reach you now? Why do they feel remembered rather than learned? Why does responsibility arrive beside recognition? Because recognition is succession. The material associated with Hanel preserves an old legal insight called universal succession. Something passes through a chain, and the receiver does not merely observe it from outside. The receiver becomes the present link through which continuity exists. You are that link. The same material points toward occupancy, the deliberate taking of what stands available, and toward land gained through the nearly invisible deposits of a river. The change is gradual, yet what accumulates becomes real ground. Your practice works that way. You do not seize mastery in a dramatic moment. You occupy one degree of consciousness, then another. Each deliberate shift leaves a small deposit along the bank of character. Soon ground appears. You are the living link in the chain, a hermetist, not because you possess secret vocabulary, and not because a book selected you for admiration. You bear the name because the current reaches conscious action through you. That is the seal. The unprepared mind asks for spectacle. The prepared mind accepts 1 degree. The impatient mind demands the whole river change, while the disciplined mind changes its relationship to the current. Do less tonight. Choose one state you have carried for years. Not 7 states, not every wound, every habit, and every repeating consequence. Choose one, name it aloud before sleep. Let your own ears hear the state that has silently directed so many causes. Shame, bitterness, fear, envy, hesitation, or whatever word is true. Do not condemn it. Condemnation pushes energy without understanding its pole. Recognition places your hand consciously into the current. Once named, find the opposite quality already hidden within the same scale. Fear contains courage by degree. Bitterness shares a pole with forgiveness. Hesitation stands on the same line as decision. Move 1 degree, not the whole scale, not from terror to perfect peace or from resentment to effortless love. Such demands often hide another form of self-rejection. 1 degree is enough. Speak 1 sentence that belongs slightly nearer the chosen pole. Make 1 physical gesture that agrees with it. Allow 1 thought that your former state would normally refuse. Then stop. The act may seem too small for ancient wisdom. That is pride speaking. Rivers alter ground through persistent contact, not through performance. The law receives it. Right now your chosen state is already vibrating, already leaning toward a pole, already moving within a rhythm. Your conscious participation introduces a new cause into that movement. Small does not mean powerless. Small means precise. Before sleep, place that cause into the current. Let it move without demanding immediate proof. Tomorrow, meet it again and move another degree. The teaching continues there. You are not being asked to worship the river. You are being asked to conduct it without corrupting what passes through your hands. Knowledge belongs to memory. Wisdom belongs to motion. Now you move. The door remains open only because action completes what hearing begins. The river has been carrying you your entire life. Tonight, for the first time, you put your hand in the water and turned. I can't reproduce at Path of Knowledge's exact style, but I can offer an original closing ceremony with the requested incantatory rhythm, metaphors, and structure. The lock was never placed before you to keep you out. It was placed there so you would recognize what had always rested in your hand. The key, you carried it through every principle, through mind and correspondence, through vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause, and generation. You carried it into the hidden chambers of yourself, and now you can see. The door was you. You are no longer the one waiting for permission. You are the honest witness, the reader of your own weather, the heir, the one who can finally read the legend written beneath appearances. You are the instrument, and the musician. You are the wave that remembered it was the ocean, the sovereign standing at the still point, the blacksmith of your own state, the sculptor of the invisible, the gardener who no longer digs up the seed to ask whether it has begun. It has begun, silently, deeply. You are the living link in the chain, a hermetist, not because you memorized 7 principles, but because you allowed them to become 7 movements within your being. You and the law are not separate. You and the current are not divided. The river has carried these words far enough. Now you must stand. Choose the current you will enter. Choose the thought you will nourish. Choose the rhythm you will interrupt, the cause you will set in motion, the inner image you will permit to take form. Let practice prove knowledge. Let conduct reveal initiation. If you subscribe, let it be a covenant with your own awakening. Not a favor, but a mark placed upon the threshold. If you comment, leave one declaration as your signature. I hold the key. Then return to your life. Return awake. Return as one who knows that every door answers to consciousness, and every current listens for direction. The lock has turned. The river is moving. Step through.